Hello and welcome. We are glad you have joined us. My name is Marco Estrada, and I'm a technical trainer specialized in Microsoft Azure infrastructure and security. I'm here to walk you through the AZ-700 course, Design and Implement Microsoft Azure Network Solutions. In this session, we'll cover the design and implementation of Azure ExpressRoute. In this video, we're going to learn how to plan and deploy Azure ExpressRoute, plus learning about ExpressRoute global reach and fastpath features to build private connectivity with reliability and performance. You will also learn how to configure the virtual network gateway for ExpressRoute and circuit peering design resiliency, and troubleshoot connections issues with confidence. Let's get started. Azure ExpressRoute is a private dedicated connection between your on-premises network and Microsoft Azure. It has built-in redundancy implemented on it, and it's more reliable and lower latency than a normal VPN site-to-site connection. You can choose to use a regional setting or maybe global reach through the premium SKU. Works like a hybrid networking solution. And you have other options that are available like fastpath or global reach. The first thing that you need to do is to select the connectivity model for ExpressRoute. Most customers will select the service provider model because they already have a telecom provider like AT&T or Verizon, or maybe you already have a network service provider like Equinix or Megaport. With this service provider, you can have a bandwidth from 50 megabits per second up to 10 gigabits per second. There are some other customers, though, that they need a direct connectivity to Microsoft Azure. Maybe because there is a regulation they need to comply, but nevertheless, you can have your connectivity directly into Azure. In these specific cases, the bandwidth available for you will be from 10 up to 100 gigabits per second. The second thing that you need to define while creating your ExpressRoute circuit is selecting your resiliency model. The first one, it is a standard resiliency where you have two different links connecting to different enterprise edge servers, and it's connected through only one peering location. The second one, the high resiliency configuration, will separate these two links into different peering locations so you have more availability for these links. And the last but not least, the maximum resiliency and recommended way to connect it is that you're going to have different circuits connecting to different Azure ExpressRoute locations. It's like having two different standard configurations connected at once. As you can see on the slide, on the left-hand side, you can see your network, which is going to connect to the right side, which is the Microsoft network. And in between is the circuit that you just created. Also, you can view the two different links that we were talking about in the previous slide connecting to the Microsoft Edge. And then you also notice something interesting in here. You have connection to the Microsoft public network. So that means, for example, connecting to Microsoft 365, Dynamics 365, or even Azure public services. And in the other side, you have a private connection. The private connection will allow you to connect to your Azure virtual network. But there is a catch. You will need to have a virtual network gateway created in order to communicate to these virtual networks. The first one, it is called the Microsoft peering, and the second, it is called the private peering. Now let's review how to create an Azure ExpressRoute circuit. Next, we are going to create a virtual network gateway dedicated for ExpressRoute. In this demo, we are going to create an ExpressRoute circuit, and then later we are going to create a virtual network gateway. And finally, we're going to simulate a connection. So let's get started with the circuit. So here we are at the hybrid connectivity in the Azure portal to set up an ExpressRoute. So in here, I'll just go and create a new ExpressRoute circuit. I'm going to use my resource group courses, and then I'm going to see that I have maximum resiliency recommended by default if I scroll down a little bit more. So I'm going to see that I have 2 ExpressRoute circuits that I can use. So if I change to high resiliency, the image also changes to have 2 different locations for the same circuit. Whereas the standard resiliency, it is going to take me to only the default, which is going to be an ExpressRoute circuit with 2 links on the same location. So we are going to use that for the purposes of this exercise. We are going to select West Europe as a region that we are going to deploy this circuit, and we are going to call it just ExpressRoute circuit for the purposes of this demo. Later, we have provider or direct as we learned on the presentation. So if we choose provider, we need to work with a service network provider for Microsoft, whereas with the direct connection, well, we're going to connect directly with Microsoft. In this case, I'm going to choose provider. The peer location or the city where I'm going to connect, it is going to be, in my case, Amsterdam. And I can select from there the different providers for this specific circuit. So we can choose, for example, Insertion, and we can get a 1 gigabit network bandwidth. So remember, we can have from 50 megabits per second up to 10 gigabits if we need more. So we're going to then select the SKU. If I'm only working with the West Europe region and only connecting to that specific location, it makes sense to select local. Whereas if I'm deploying multiple resources in the same geopolitical region as West Europe, which for example includes North Europe, France, Spain, and so on, I can choose a standard. And if I want to choose other regions outside of my geopolitical region, for example, the US-based regions or in Asia regions, I need to go with premium. The billing model that I need to select depends on the amount of data that I'm going to transfer. So I can either select metered or unlimited. So in our case, well, since this is just a test and we don't have an on-premises locations to connect with, we're just going to choose metered. Then we have some recommended alert rules that we can enable. In my case, I'm not going to enable those, so I'm going to just review it and create it and wait for this to be ready. Once the circuit has completed, we can go back to the resource. Let's go back to the hybrid connectivity and take a look at the ExpressRoute circuits. One of the things that we can take a look at is the different configurations that we selected. One thing that you need to check is that besides the circuit being enabled, you also need to check if your circuit has been provisioned or not. Remember, the process of setting up an ExpressRoute circuit, the first thing is that you need to create a circuit, and the second to ask the service provider to provision it. In my case, I don't have a service provider, so I'm not going to get that provision. We can still go to the next step, which is creating an ExpressRoute gateway. Just like on the virtual network gateway for VPN, we can do the same for ExpressRoute. We're going to call it ExpressRoute Virtual Network Gateway, and we're going to select West Europe, which is the place that we have the hub network. We're going to select ExpressRoute, and let's take a look at the different SKUs. We have standard, high performance, ultra performance, and the same but with availability zones in here. We are going to keep the standard, and in here we're going to select the VNet hub. We already have a gateway subnet, so there is no need for me to create one because it was already there from the first demo where we created the virtual network and the different subnets. And since the public IPs are now managed by Microsoft, I don't need to add them here, just like I did with the virtual network gateway for VPN. Let's just create this virtual network gateway and wait a little bit until this is ready. Then we can go and create a connection once this deployment is complete. We can take a look at the resource so we can see that this is an ExpressRoute gateway with a SKU standard. And what we need to do now is that we need to come back to the hybrid connectivity setup and go to the last step. Since the circuit has not been provisioned, the ExpressRoute connection, we're not going to be able to complete it, but still we can see the configuration. We're going to select the course's resource group in the connection type, and on a previous video, we saw the side-to-side, but in this case, we're going to select ExpressRoute within the settings. What we need to do is that we need to select the proper virtual network gateway that we just created. We can see here that we have the VPN virtual network gateway. So let's select the ExpressRoute now, and we also choose the ExpressRoute circuit that we created before. But this cannot be selected because we haven't that provisioned it yet. So once that is done, I can select the circuit, put a name on it, give it a route weight, and enable FastPath if it's available. And this is something that we are going to learn in the presentation. So let's go back to it. Just like the virtual network gateway for VPN, the ExpressRoute gateway also has a limitation depending on the SKU that you choose regarding the bandwidth that you can use. As you probably learned from previous slides, we have circuits that can go from 50 megabits per second up to 100 gigabits per second in ExpressRoute Direct. So the virtual network gateway sometimes cannot sustain this amount and may become a bottleneck for your virtual network. That's why you can enable the ExpressRoute FastPath feature. In this specific configuration, you're bypassing the virtual network gateway and sending the traffic directly into your virtual network. But remember, this doesn't mean that you are not going to deploy a virtual network gateway. You just changing the path of your traffic. And also, you will need to have an ultra performance ExpressRoute Gateway 3 with availability zones or ExpressRoute Gateway scale with 10 units to make this work. Now let's imagine for a moment that your company has different locations around the world. How you communicate those locations nowadays? Maybe you're using a satellite connection, and maybe it is not as reliable or maybe as fast as you want it to be. That's why also we provide you with one feature called the Azure ExpressRoute Global Reach. With this configuration, these two different places in the world can have its own ExpressRoute circuit connecting locally to the city that you choose to do. And then with that, you can enable global reach. So you will use the Microsoft Backbone network to connect these two different locations. But remember, the SKU to select, it is the premium one, which gives you access to all the global Azure regions. Sometimes you need to troubleshoot your ExpressRoute circuit. The first thing to do is to ensure that your circuit is enabled and also provisioned. You can also reset the circuit if needed. Another thing that you can do, especially for your private peering, is to use the Azure Network Connectivity Toolkit. The toolkit is a PowerShell module that you can download in any machine to test either the bandwidth, so how many hops you're doing, in order to check how your connection is behaving. In a previous video, we learned about Azure VPN Gateway. And now you're maybe thinking about which one is the best solution for your company. So that's why you need to take into consideration the different features that they offer you to do the right thing. So for example, the connection type. In the VPN gateway, everything goes through the internet, secure, yes, but nevertheless, the internet. And ExpressRoute offers you a private connection. So that it also has an effect on the reliability and performance of this connection. Second, it is about bandwidth. So you have up to 10 gigabits per second in VPN gateway, but then again, it is going through the internet. Whereas you have this and more in ExpressRoute in a private connection. In terms of security, Azure VPN Gateway will give you IPsec by default, whereas in Azure ExpressRoute, you will need to have an ExpressRoute direct circuit in order to enable MACsec. For the SLA part, since the VPN gateway, it is going through the internet, so we can give you SLA for the virtual network gateway, but we cannot give you that for the internet, of course. And ExpressRoute, well, we're going to have the SLA 99.9 for the whole connection, end-to-end availability. The use cases for VPN connection are for light or maybe medium workloads. It has a lower cost, it's very quick setup, whereas ExpressRoute is more for enterprise scenarios, or maybe you have mission critical workloads that you want to support. And last but not least, the connectivity scope. Both will connect you with your on-premises networks. But remember, the Azure VPN Gateway only is going to connect you to your Azure virtual network, whereas in ExpressRoute, on top of that, you can have a Microsoft peering connection that will connect your on-premises network to the Microsoft 365, Dynamics 365, or even Azure Public Services. This concludes our session. Please review the following slide to remember some of the topics touched on this video. Pause it now and read the questions out loud. Are you able to answer them? I hope you can. There are many ways to continue your learning journey. We encourage you to watch other videos in this course or search out your next favorite topic on Microsoft Learn at aka.ms/learn.